I sat at the plaintiff's table in federal family court on a Tuesday morning in October, in the best suit I owned, with my hands folded on the table in front of me, and my face arranged in the expression I used for board meetings where someone was about to lose something they didn't know they were about to lose. 20 feet away, across the aisle that separated the plaintiff's table from where I sat, Chloe Davis was vibrating with the specific, barely contained excitement of a woman who believed she was 45 minutes away from the best financial decision of her life. She was wearing a dress that her credit card statement would confirm she could not afford. Beside her, a 5-year-old boy sat in the chair with the patient, unremarkable calm of a child who had been brought to many adult places and had learned to wait in them. She had sworn 20 minutes ago with her right hand raised and her voice carrying the practiced tremor of someone performing sincerity for an audience, that I was the father of that child. She had presented a DNA document from a local clinic in the city, showing a 99.9% paternity match, and her attorney had submitted it into evidence with the smooth confidence of a man who believed the document was what it said it was and had no particular reason to examine that belief. The judge had accepted the document, he had read it, he had set it down, and then he had picked up a different envelope, sealed, bearing the logo of the FBI Forensic Science Laboratory, with a chain of custody certification attached that began with a federal phlebotomist and ended with the lab director's signature. And he was currently reading its contents with an expression that had changed, in the past 90 seconds, from professional neutrality to something I had not seen on a federal judge's face before and suspected was relatively rare. Chloe looked at me from across the aisle with the triumphant, anticipatory expression of a woman who was already mentally spending money. She believed the next few minutes were about to guarantee. I looked back at her with the expression I used for board meetings. I had been waiting for this morning for 4 weeks. 4 weeks since she had walked through the doors of the Westfield Country Club with a child and a manila envelope, and the specific, calculated audacity of someone who has decided that a billionaire's reputation is worth more to him than the truth, and who has decided to price it accordingly. She was wrong about that, but I hadn't told her so. I had simply made sure she walked, of her own free will, into a room where the truth was administered by the federal government, and the consequences of lying to it were the kind that came with handcuffs. To understand how Chloe Davis converted her extortion plot into a federal indictment, you have to go back to the rehearsal dinner, and the manila envelope, and the night she made the most expensive miscalculation of her life. The rehearsal dinner had been Alina's idea in the style and my idea in the execution, which was how most things between us worked, and which was one of the reasons I had asked her to marry me. She had wanted something intimate, 30 people, the private dining room at Westfield, flowers from the same florist she'd used since her mother's birthday a decade ago, the kind of evening that was small enough to be actually felt rather than merely attended. I had handled the logistics, the reservation, the catering coordination, the small details that Alina didn't know I was managing until they were already done, because I had learned early in our relationship that the most effective way to take care of someone was to do it before they knew it needed doing. We were 1 week from the wedding. The room was exactly what Alina had wanted: candlelight, the specific warmth of 30 people who had known us separately and had become, over the years of our relationship, something like a collective, and the easy, unhurried happiness of an evening that knew what it was building toward. I was 3 sentences into the toast when the doors opened. I had been speaking about Alina, about the specific quality of her attention, the way she listened to things, the particular intelligence of someone who understands people by watching how they move through the world rather than by cataloging what they say about themselves. I had been speaking from notes I had written and then discarded because the notes felt like a performance of the thing rather than the thing, and I wanted the thing. The doors opened. The room went silent before I consciously registered why, the reflexive silence of 30 people simultaneously receiving a social signal that overrode what they had been doing. I turned. Chloe Davis was standing in the doorway. I hadn't seen her in 6 years, since the end of a relationship that had lasted 7 months and concluded when I discovered she had been seeing someone else for the last 4 of them. A discovery I had made with the specific, quiet clarity of a person whose trust, once broken at a certain level, simply does not reconstitute itself. I had ended it the same day. She had not contested the ending, which had told me everything I needed to know about what the relationship had been to her. She looked different in the way that 6 years makes people look different. Not older exactly, but more deliberate, as though the intervening time had refined her awareness of what her face could do and how to use it. The tears she was producing were extraordinary, not the blotchy, asymmetrical tears of actual grief, but the precise, symmetrical tears of someone who had practiced the expression, until the performance and the mechanism had become indistinguishable. Beside her, a small boy in a miniature dress shirt stood with his hand in hers, looking at the room with the undefended curiosity of a child who doesn't understand why the adults have all stopped moving. Through the country club's window, the tall, elegantly draped windows that looked out over the grounds, I could see the quick, repetitive light of camera flashes. She had tipped the photographers in advance. She had planned the entrance timing to coincide with the toast. She had staged every element of this with the attention to production that I had seen applied to actual creative work, in which she had apparently been applying, for the past several weeks at minimum, to engineering the destruction of my wedding. She walked to the head table. The room watched her with the held breath silence of people who understand they are witnessing something, but don't yet know what category it belongs to. She put a manila envelope on the table in front of me. She looked at Alina, then at me, and her voice was pitched perfectly to carry to every corner of the room without appearing to be raised. "You can't just abandon your son to marry this woman, Julian." The envelope contained a document. I could see the clinic's letterhead through the open flap, the bold typeface of a results summary, the percentage that was supposed to end my life as I had built it. I looked at it. I looked at Chloe. I kept my face exactly where I had learned to keep it in rooms where someone needed me to react and I had decided not to. "Let's talk privately," I said. The coach room off the main corridor was small and smelled of cedar and other people's wool, and Chloe closed the door behind us with the efficiency of someone who knew the conversation that was coming, because she had written it. The tears stopped, not gradually. Immediately, with the completeness of a performance ending once the audience has been removed, the expression she had been wearing in the dining room simply absent, replaced by the face underneath it. The face I had caught glimpses of during 7 months of a relationship that I had understood incompletely while I was in it, and had understood much better afterward. "You've seen what I have," she said. "So let's skip the part where you pretend to be outraged and get to the part where we discuss numbers." "Tell me the numbers," I said. $50,000 a month. Child support, lifestyle maintenance, the whole package. She held the manila envelope out to me, the DNA document, the printed confirmation of a thing that had not happened. "This goes to TMZ tomorrow if you don't agree tonight, and then to your board, and then to your investors. I've already done the math on what a paternity scandal does to your company's stock in the current market." She paused, letting the math sit between us. "You're a smart man, Julian. You know settling is cheaper." I looked at the document. The clinic's name was legitimate, I knew it, had seen it on advertising near my office building. The format was correct. The percentage was exactly the number that a fraudulent document would choose, because 99.9 was the number laypeople associated with certainty. Someone had done their research on what a convincing forgery looked like. Someone had also apparently done their research on what a billionaire's reputation was worth, and had priced the product accordingly. "I'll need to consult my attorneys," I said. Her expression didn't change. It was already at the expression she used when she believed she was in control, which was not a smile but was adjacent to one, the expression of a person who has made a calculation and is satisfied with the result. "You have 48 hours, she said. "After that, I go to the press." She opened the coach room door and walked back toward the lobby, and the cameras through the window caught her exit with the same efficiency they had caught her entrance, which confirmed that this had been choreographed to the minute, that somewhere in the preceding weeks she had made calls and sent messages, and arranged timing with the specific, focused attention of someone running an operation. I stood in the coach room for a moment, then I went back to the dining room. Alina was at the head table where I had left her, and her face had the expression of a woman holding herself together in public with the sustained effort that holding together in public requires. The specific, controlled composure of someone whose instinct is to ask questions but who understands that this is not the room for them. She looked at me when I returned, and her eyes asked the question her voice wasn't. I pulled her chair back from the table and offered my hand, and she stood, and I guided her quietly toward the side door that opened onto the grounds. away from 30 people who were performing the careful social task of looking anywhere except at the two of us. We walked out onto the terrace. The evening air was the specific temperature of late autumn at dusk, cold enough to be present, not cold enough to be uncomfortable. The photographer lights had moved to the front of the building. Out here it was dark and quiet in hours. Alina looked at me. "Talk to me," she said. Not a demand, the specific, steady request of a person who trusts the person they are asking. "She's lying," I said. "Julian," her voice was careful, "the document is forged," I said. "Or if it isn't forged, it's the result of a bribed technician, which amounts to the same thing legally." I paused. I had been carrying this piece of information for 12 years. Since the age of 22, when I had disclosed it to a doctor and understood for the first time what my childhood illness had cost me permanently. And I had shared it with Alina 8 months into our relationship, because she had the right to know it, and because I had trusted her with the kind of completeness that doesn't leave categories unshared. She already knew. "The document says 99.9%, she said. "It can say whatever she paid to have it say," I said. "The number is irrelevant, Alina. I know the number is wrong because of something no document she produces can change." I took her hands. "When I was 10 years old, I had a severe viral infection that caused a complication called non-obstructive azoospermia. I have the medical records. I have the specialist's notes from when I was 14 and when I was 22. I am completely and permanently sterile." I held her eyes with mine. "That child is not my son. It is biologically impossible for him to be my son. She is lying, and I can prove it, and I am going to prove it in a way she cannot recover from." Alina was quiet for a moment. The darkness beyond the terrace was the ordinary darkness of a country club's grounds at dusk, and the lights from the dining room behind us threw a warm rectangle across the stone and caught the edge of her face. And she looked at me with the expression she wore when she was processing something completely before she responded to it. "What are you going to do?" she said. "Exactly what she wants me to do," I said. "In a room where what she wants costs her everything." I took out my phone. I found my attorney's number. I pressed call. Alina watched me make the call and did not ask any more questions, because she was the person who listened to how things moved rather than what they said. And what she heard in the way I made the call told her what she needed to know. Chloe thought she had handed me a gun pointed at my head. She hadn't checked whether it was loaded. The board met at 7 the following morning. Not a scheduled meeting. The kind of meeting that assembles itself when news has traveled through the right channels overnight. And the people whose institutional function is to protect a company's value have decided that waiting until the regularly scheduled hour is a luxury the situation doesn't allow. 8 people in the conference room on the 32nd floor by 7:05. The city still dark outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Coffee from the executive kitchen going cold on the table because nobody was drinking it. Julian sat at the head of the table in the same suit he had worn to the rehearsal dinner, which he had not gone home to change because there had not been time, and he looked at the 8 faces arranged in the particular configuration of people who have a problem they need solved, and are collectively unsure whether the person at the head of the table is the solution or the problem. The CFO spoke first, which was predictable. She had the most specific relationship with the numbers, and the numbers were what the board was protecting. The stock had dipped 3% in pre-market trading on the basis of entertainment media coverage of the incident, which had been picked up by 2 financial blogs that monitored executive personal news for exactly this category of story. 3% in pre-market was noise. If the story ran in mainstream press with any sustained momentum, noise became signal. "We should be talking settlement," she said. "Quiet, fast, structured to look like voluntary support rather than legal resolution. The NDA has to be ironclad." "We're not settling," Julian said. The room was quiet in the way rooms are quiet when the person with the authority to make a decision has made it, and the people around the table are recalibrating from advocacy to compliance. Julian, the general counsel, a man named Patterson who had been with the company for 9 years and whose professional relationship with Julian was one of genuine mutual respect, spoke with the careful directness of someone who understood both the legal landscape and the person he was speaking to. "The optics of a prolonged paternity dispute, even one you ultimately win, are." "I'm not going to have a prolonged dispute," Julian said. I'm going to have a very short one, and she's going to lose it in a way that ends any possibility of a second attempt. He looked at Patterson. I need to meet with you and the family law team this afternoon, just us. I have a medical history I need to walk you through, and then I need you to build something specific with it. Patterson looked at him for a moment with the assessing attention of an attorney receiving information that is about to change the shape of his assignment. How specific, he said. Federal court specific, Julian said. He told Patterson about the azoospermia at 2 in the afternoon, in Patterson's office with the door closed, and a paralegal excluded from the meeting at Julian's request, because this was the category of information that existed on a strict need-to-know basis. And Patterson was the only person in the building who needed to know it for the next 48 hours. He had the medical records with him, not copies, originals, because he had known for 12 years that this documentation would matter someday in some context, and he had maintained it accordingly. The way he maintained everything he considered important, completely, in order, accessible without delay. The records went back to the specialist he had first seen at 14, with the clinical language of a pediatric endocrinologist documenting the sequelae of a viral orchitis at age 10, and forward to the adult specialist he had seen at 22 for a comprehensive assessment that had confirmed, with the finality of a second opinion delivered by someone who had no stake in the outcome, that the original assessment was accurate and permanent. Non-obstructive azoospermia, complete absence of sperm production. Not a reduced count, not a marginal result. The absolute, biological, irreversible absence of the cellular mechanism required for paternity. Patterson read the records the way he read everything, completely, without comment, with the focused attention of someone building a case from the inside out rather than from a position. When he finished, he set the final page down and looked at Julian. She forged the clinic document, Julian said. Or she bribed a technician to produce a document that looks like a clinic result. Either way, it doesn't survive contact with an actual DNA test. Then we demand an independent test, Patterson said. Standard legal procedure for contested paternity. No, Julian said. An independent test gives her a second opportunity to bribe a technician. She's already demonstrated she's willing to do it once. We need a test she cannot touch, administered by people she cannot approach, with results entered directly into a federal record. He paused. I want to give her what she's asking for. Patterson was quiet for a moment, which was not his usual mode. Patterson's usual mode was continuous, rapid processing, but which Julian had come to associate with the specific register of an attorney encountering an approach. They hadn't considered and examining it from multiple angles simultaneously before responding. Walk me through it, Patterson said. She wants $50,000 a month, fine. But we don't cut her a check. We establish a federal child beneficiary trust. She gets the money through the trust, which protects it from taxation and ensures proper accounting. Julian set a printed document on the desk, the preliminary research he had done the previous night, after Alina had gone to sleep, and he had sat at his desk in the home office until 3 in the morning building the structure that would end this. Federal beneficiary trusts for minor children require an unbroken chain of custody DNA verification, administered by a federally affiliated laboratory before the trust can be activated. It's standard anti-fraud statute. The government requires it to prevent money laundering through child support mechanisms. Patterson looked at the document. He read the relevant statute citation. She can't use the clinic paper, he said. The clinic paper is worthless for federal purposes. To activate the trust, she has to submit the child to a federal swab. FBI forensics lab handles the analysis. Chain of custody is federal from the moment the swab is taken. Julian looked at him. She cannot bribe an FBI phlebotomist the way she bribed whatever technician produced that document. The federal system doesn't have that gap. Patterson was quiet again. Then, and when the test comes back. It comes back 0%, Julian said, because the biology is not arguable. And at that point she has, on federal record, submitted a forged document and sworn to its authenticity as part of a federal trust application. He paused. Which is federal fraud. And she will have additionally, in the course of the proceeding, made sworn statements about my paternity under penalty of perjury. He paused again. Which is federal perjury. Patterson set his pen down. He looked at Julian with the expression of an attorney who has just been handed a case architecture that is simultaneously elegant, legally airtight, and the kind of thing that will be discussed in law school classrooms in the future. "You want to give her exactly what she's asking for," he said slowly, "in a vehicle that transforms her extortion into a federal crime the moment she steps inside it." "I want to give her a door," Julian said. "She's going to walk through it on her own." Patterson's team spent 4 days drafting the trust agreement. It was a substantial document, 41 pages, the appropriate length for a federal child beneficiary trust with the specific provisions required by the relevant statutes. Each section drafted with the care of lawyers who understood that every word would be examined by a federal court, and who had the additional awareness, known only to them and their client, that the document was designed to be walked into rather than around. The agreement confirmed Julian's commitment to $50,000 per month in child support, structured through the trust for the benefit of the minor child, to be activated upon completion of the mandatory federal DNA verification process as required under the applicable statutes, which were cited by number in the relevant section. Because citing them by number was what you did in a federal document, and also because it made it harder for Chloe's attorney to claim he hadn't been informed of the requirement. Chloe's attorney was a man named Greer who handled family law at the aggressive, contingency fee end of the practice. The kind of attorney who took cases like this because the potential settlement made the risk worthwhile, and whose evaluation of risk did not, in this instance, include the possibility that his client's foundational factual claim was a federal crime waiting to be activated. Greer called Patterson on a Wednesday afternoon. Julian listened to Patterson's end of the call from the chair across his desk. "The federal verification requirement," Greer said. Julian could hear the slight edge in his voice through the phone, the edge of an attorney who has found a complication and is deciding how to present it to his client. "My client has concerns about the invasiveness of a federal procedure for a young child. The statute requires it," Patterson said, in the mild, informational tone of a man conveying facts that have no emotional content. "It's non-negotiable for federal trust activation. You're welcome to review Section 14.3 of the agreement and the underlying citation. It's standard for trusts of this value involving minor children." A pause. "The local clinic result she provided is not a recognized instrument for federal trust purposes," Patterson said. "The government requires an unbroken chain of custody from a federally affiliated lab. The local clinic document doesn't meet that standard regardless of its content." Another pause. "She would need to bring the child to a federal facility." "Correct. The FBI forensics lab has a family services intake process that's designed to be minimally disruptive. We've included the intake coordinator's contact information in Appendix C." Patterson let a brief silence sit. "The trust provides significant protection for the child's financial future, Mr. Greer. The verification process is a one-time requirement. After that, the funds disperse monthly without additional procedural requirements." Greer took the information back to his client. Julian knew this because Greer called back the following afternoon and the call was shorter. "My client agrees to the verification process," Greer said. "She wants to proceed as quickly as possible. We'll have the agreement ready for signature Friday," Patterson said. He hung up and looked at Julian. "She's going to try to bribe the technician," Julian said. It wasn't a question. "Probably," Patterson said. "It won't work." "No," Julian said, "it won't." The signing took place on a Friday afternoon in Patterson's conference room. Chloe arrived with Greer and without the child, dressed in clothing that was slightly too formal for the occasion in the specific way of someone who wanted the occasion to register as significant. She sat across the table from Julian and his attorneys, and she looked at him with the expression she had been wearing since the courtroom. The expression of a woman who believed she was managing a situation to her advantage, and wanted the person across the table to understand that she believed this. Julian looked back at her with the board meeting expression. The agreement was 41 pages. Greer walked Chloe through a summary. Julian watched her listen to the summary the way he watched people in negotiations listen to things, for the quality of the attention, for what they tracked and what they let go, for the difference between understanding and believing they understood. She tracked the monthly payment amount. She tracked the activation timeline. She tracked the provisions about tax treatment and asset protection. She did not track the federal verification requirements with the attention they deserve. She moved past that section with the impatience of someone who has decided a detail is procedural rather than consequential. And Julian watched her make that decision and said nothing. The pen moved across the signature line with the confidence of a woman who believed she was signing herself into $50,000 a month. Julian signed his own copy across the table, which was a formality. His signature on the agreement was meaningless without the DNA verification, and both parties knew it, and only one of them understood what the DNA verification was going to produce. Greer collected the executed copies. Chloe stood, smoothed her dress, and looked at Julian with the expression she had been saving for this moment, the expression of a woman closing a transaction she had won. "I'll be in touch about scheduling the verification," she said. "We look forward to it," Julian said. She left, Greer followed. The conference room door closed. Patterson looked at Julian. "She's going to walk in there and try to hand an FBI agent an envelope," Julian said. "And the FBI agent is going to look at her the way FBI agents look at people who try to hand them envelopes," Patterson said. "And then it will be too late to back out," Julian said, "because she'll have signed a federal agreement and the verification will be court-mandated, and refusing to comply will itself be a federal matter." He stood, he picked up his copy of the agreement. He looked at it for a moment, 41 pages. Each one drafted with the precision of people who understood exactly what they were building and why. "When's the court date?" he said. 4 weeks, Patterson said. Julian nodded. He put the agreement in his briefcase. 4 weeks was nothing. He had been waiting 12 years for the moment when the biology that had been taken from him at age 10 stopped being something he carried quietly and became something he used. 4 weeks was nothing at all. The FBI's Family Services Intake Facility occupied the 14th floor of the federal building on 6th Avenue, which was a floor chosen, Julian suspected, for its deliberate ordinariness. Not the intimidating upper floors where the serious investigative divisions operated, not the lobby-adjacent floors that processed routine federal business, but somewhere in the middle, designed to be accessible without being casual, official without being aggressive. Chloe arrived on a Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, which was the appointment time the intake coordinator had provided when Greer's office called to schedule. Julian knew this because the scheduling had been coordinated through Patterson's office, and Patterson had told him, and Julian had noted it on his calendar with the specific attention he gave to things he needed to know the timing of without needing to be present for. He was not present. He did not need to be. What happened on the 14th floor that morning was going to happen without his involvement because it was administered by the federal government, and the federal government did not require his participation to do its job correctly. What he knew of what happened, he learned afterward, through sources that were not official but were reliable, the particular information network of a man whose attorney has professional relationships with people who work in buildings like that one. Chloe had arrived with the child and without Greer, which was her first error of the morning. The decision of a woman who had decided the procedure was administrative rather than legal, and that bringing her attorney to an administrative appointment was unnecessary. She had worn clothing that was more appropriate for a social occasion than a federal intake, which was not an error exactly, but was information about how she understood the environment she was entering. The intake coordinator had been a woman in her 40s named Reyes, who had processed several hundred court-ordered DNA verifications over the course of her career, and whose professional demeanor was the specific, efficient neutrality of someone who has done a thing enough times to have shed all unnecessary effect around it. Chloe had been pleasant with Reyes in the performed, slightly condescending way she was pleasant with people she categorized as service workers. Warm enough to seem likable, with a quality of transaction underneath the warmth that most people caught and most people elected not to comment on. The phlebotomist had arrived to administer the swab. He was a federal employee, FBI credentialed, whose role in this specific process was to collect the biological sample, seal it immediately in a tamper-evident container, and initiate the chain of custody documentation that would follow the sample from this room to the FBI forensics lab without break or interruption. Because an unbroken chain of custody was the entire point of the federal verification requirement, and the people who administered it understood that the point was the point. Chloe had waited until Reyes stepped briefly from the room, a moment's absence, routine and unremarkable, and then she had approached the phlebotomist. What she said exactly, he later described in a statement as an offer to compensate him privately for producing a result consistent with the original clinic document she had provided to the court. She had been direct about it, which suggested she had believed, based on whatever prior experience had informed her confidence in this approach, that directness was the efficient method. She had produced an envelope. The phlebotomist had looked at the envelope. He had looked at Chloe with the specific expression of a federal employee being offered a bribe, which is an expression that contains a great deal of information in a small amount of space. He had told her to step back from the collection station. She had understood in that moment that this was not the same category of person as the technician at the local clinic, but the swab was court-mandated under a signed federal agreement. Refusing to submit the child to the collection would constitute a breach of the trust agreement she had signed, which was a federal document, which meant the breach would be a federal matter, which meant that the options available to her at the moment she understood the envelope was not going to work, were significantly less than the options she had arrived on the 14th floor believing she had. Reyes returned. The phlebotomist collected the swab from the child, who sat in the collection chair with the uncomplicated patience of a 5-year-old who had been told this was a simple cheek swab, and for whom it was, in fact, a simple cheek swab. The tamper-evident container was sealed. The chain of custody documentation was initiated. The sample was logged into the federal tracking system. Chloe watched it happen with the expression of a woman who was performing the calculation of available exits and arriving, one by one, at the conclusion that they had closed. She left the federal building at 10:37. The sample left by secure courier at 11. Julian received a text from Patterson at 11:15. Swab completed, chain of custody initiated, results in 3 to 4 weeks. He read it at his desk in the corner office on the 32nd floor. With the city spread below him in the specific way cities look from 32 floors up in the middle of a Tuesday morning, ordinary, continuous, entirely indifferent to the particular thing that had just been set in motion on a floor of a federal building across town. He put his phone down and went back to the quarterly report he had been reading. The court date was a Tuesday in October. Julian arrived at Federal Family Court at 8:45, with Patterson and 2 members of the family law team, and they went through the security check with the unhurried efficiency of people who had done this before, and had nothing on their persons that required explanation. The hallway outside Courtroom 4 had the specific atmosphere of a family court building on a Tuesday morning. The waiting, the tension that accumulated in the spaces between proceedings, the particular quality of a place where significant things were decided in rooms that looked like conference rooms. He did not see Chloe in the hallway. He saw her when he entered the courtroom at 9:02 and found her already at the plaintiff's table with Greer, seated in the forward-leaning posture of someone for whom this morning represented the conclusion of a significant effort, and who was ready for the conclusion. She looked at him when he came in. The expression she produced was the one she had been wearing since the courtroom at Westfield, the expression of managed control, of a woman who believed the situation was proceeding according to her plan and who wanted him to understand that she believed this. He had studied this expression for 4 weeks. He understood every element of it. He sat at the defendant's table with Patterson and looked at the front of the room. The clerk called the proceeding to order at 9:15. The Honorable Frederick Marsh, a federal family court judge who had been on the bench for 19 years and whose reputation, which Patterson had researched thoroughly, was for precise, impatient, extremely fact-based adjudication, entered from the door behind the bench and took his seat with the efficiency of a man who had a full docket and understood that the morning's allocation of time was finite. He reviewed the file. He noted the appearances. He established the procedural posture of the proceeding, the trust agreement, the federal verification requirement, the purpose of today's hearing as the formal petition to activate the trust following completion of the mandatory DNA verification process. Then he said, "Ms. Davis, your attorney has indicated you wish to make a formal statement to the court before we proceed to the verification results. You may do so." Greer stood. He walked Chloe through the formal version of the account she had been telling since the rehearsal dinner. the relationship with Julian, the birth of the child, the years of unsupported single parenthood, the current petition for the trust activation that would provide the financial support the child required. It was well structured, as Greer's presentations usually were, the narrative architecture of a family law attorney who understood what judges found persuasive and had arranged the facts accordingly. The facts in this case were not facts, but Greer didn't know that. Greer believed his clients account the way attorneys believe clients when the clients have provided documentation that appears to support the account. And the documentation Chloe had provided, the clinic result, the birth records, the photographs of the child across his documented years of life, appeared to support it. The judge listened. He made notes. He asked 2 clarifying questions about the timeline, which Greer answered, which Chloe supplemented with the specific, earnest attention of a woman performing sincerity for an audience she believed was receiving the performance as intended. Then the judge said, "Ms. Davis, I'm going to ask you to take the stand for a formal sworn statement regarding the paternity claim underlying this petition." Chloe stood. She walked to the witness stand with the composed self-possession of a woman who has thought about this moment and prepared for it, who understood that the sworn statement was a formality preceding the result she expected, and who had decided to execute the formality with the same performative conviction she had brought to every other element of the preceding weeks. The clerk administered the oath. Chloe raised her right hand and affirmed, with the flat, practiced certainty of someone repeating words they have said before in their mind many times, that she would tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She sat. The judge looked at her from the bench with the specific attention of a judge who reads people the way other people read documents, not for what they perform, but for what the performance reveals about the space between the performance and the truth. "Ms. Davis," he said, "for the record, you are the petitioner in this matter, claiming that the respondent, Julian Vance, is the biological father of the minor child in question, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Chloe said. "And the paternity claim underlying this trust petition is based on your personal knowledge of the circumstances of the child's conception, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you have provided to this court a DNA document from a local clinic showing a 99.9% paternity probability, and you are representing that document as authentic and accurate." A fraction of a pause, small enough that most people in the room wouldn't have noticed it. Julian noticed it. "Yes, Your Honor," Chloe said. The judge wrote something on his notepad. "One more question, Ms. Davis, for the record. You swear, under penalty of perjury, that Julian Vance is the biological father of this child, and that you did not falsify or cause to be falsified any prior medical documents submitted to this court." Chloe looked at Julian. He looked back at her with the board meeting expression, the one he had been wearing since the courtroom, since the signing, since the morning he had pulled the medical records from the file where he had kept them for 12 years and laid them on Patterson's desk. The expression of a man in a room where something was about to be decided and who knew, with the certainty of someone who has built the outcome rather than hoped for it, exactly how it was going to be decided. She looked back at the judge. She smiled. "I swear, Your Honor," she said. The judge nodded. He reached to the corner of the bench where a sealed envelope had been placed by the clerk before the proceeding began. The envelope that bore the FBI Forensic Science Laboratory's logo and the chain of custody certification and the signature of the lab director, and had been sitting there since 8:51 this morning, when the clerk had received it by federal courier and logged it into the court's record system. He picked it up. The courtroom was quiet with the specific quality of silence that fills a room when something sealed is about to be opened, when the gap between what people believe and what is true is about to be closed by something that cannot be argued with. Julian placed both hands flat on the table in front of him. He waited. The judge opened the envelope with the unhurried deliberateness of a man who understood that what he was about to read would determine the remainder of the proceeding, and who did not believe that hurrying improved the accuracy of anything. He removed 2 pages. He read the first. His expression, which had been the calibrated neutrality of a federal judge in active session, did something that Julian had not seen it do in the 40 minutes of the proceeding. It changed. Not dramatically. Federal Judge Frederick Marsh was not a man who expressed himself dramatically, 19 years on the bench having refined his emotional register to the precise minimum required for the work. but something shifted in the quality of his attention. A recalibration, the expression of a man reading something that has reorganized his understanding of the room he is sitting in. He read the second page. He set both pages down on the bench in front of him with the specific, deliberate placement of a person who needs his hands free for what comes next. He looked at Chloe on the witness stand. She was watching him with the expression she had walked into the courtroom with, the managed confidence of a woman who believed the sealed envelope contained a result she had already been paid to produce. The expression had not changed yet. It was still the expression of someone waiting for confirmation of something they expected. "Ms. Davis," the judge said. His voice had changed. Not in volume, he was still speaking at the measured, judicial register of a man conducting a proceeding. But the temperature had changed, the way the temperature of a room changes when a door has been opened to something outside. The FBI Forensic Science Laboratory has concluded, with 100% scientific certainty, that there is a 0% probability that Julian Vance is the biological father of the minor child in question. The silence in the courtroom lasted approximately 2 seconds. Chloe's expression moved, not all at once, in sequence, each element of the managed confidence encountering the statement and failing to hold against it. The way a structure fails not in a single collapse but in the progressive failure of its load-bearing elements one after another. The certainty first, then the composure, then the surface below the composure, until what remained on her face was something that had not been there since the courtroom at Westfield, something unmanaged and unperformed and entirely real. "That's not," she started. Her voice was different, the practiced modulation was gone. "The test is wrong, you need to run it again, there must have been a contamination." "Sit down, Ms. Davis," the judge said. One sentence. The sentence of a man exercising authority he had not needed to raise his voice to establish in 19 years and did not need to raise it now. She stopped. "The FBI Forensic Science Laboratory does not produce contaminated results," the judge said. "The chain of custody in this case was administered by federal personnel from the moment of collection and has been unbroken and fully documented. The result is not subject to challenge on procedural grounds." He paused. "Furthermore, the word landed in the room with the weight of a word that a federal judge uses when what follows it is something that has not been anticipated by any party in the proceeding. Because the verification was conducted using the FBI's CODIS system, the Combined DNA Index System, the federal database that cross-references biological samples against a national registry. The minor child's DNA profile was automatically run against existing profiles in the database as part of standard federal protocol. Chloe's attorney had gone still in the way that attorneys go still when they understand that a proceeding has departed from its expected architecture, in a direction that their preparation did not include. "The CODIS cross-reference produced a familial match," the judge said. He looked down at the second page of the FBI report. He read from it with the flat, factual precision of a man reading a document into a federal record. "The biological father of the minor child has been identified through familial DNA matching as Hector Ramirez, also known as Hector Ramon Ramirez Vega, also known as El Lobo. Mr. Ramirez is currently listed on the FBI's most wanted registry in connection with federal racketeering charges, international narcotics trafficking, and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder." The courtroom erupted. Not loudly, federal family court was not a room where people shouted. And the people in it were attorneys and court officers and judicial staff who understood that what was happening required stillness rather than reaction. But the eruption was present in the quality of the silence that followed the judge's statement, in the way that the stillness of controlled professionals in a room where something extraordinary has occurred has a texture that ordinary silence does not. Greer had stood. His face had the expression of an attorney who has just understood, in complete and irreversible clarity, that his client had not given him accurate information about the case he was building, and who was doing the rapid, private calculation of his own exposure in relation to the document his client had provided, and that he had submitted to the court as evidence. "Your Honor," Greer started. "Mr. Greer, sit down," the judge said, with the same tone he had used with Chloe. The tone of a man whose patience with the interruption of a proceeding he was managing was finite and had reached its limit. He looked at the court officer stationed at the side of the room. "Please contact the U.S. Marshals Service. I'm issuing a notice of federal perjury committed in this proceeding and requesting their immediate presence." He looked at the clerk. "I'm also issuing a referral to the FBI field office regarding the CODIS match and its implications for any ongoing investigation into the identified individual." Chloe was on her feet. The witness stand was approximately 8 feet from the plaintiff's table, and she had moved toward it with the directionless momentum of a person whose plan has failed completely, and whose body is responding to the failure before her mind has finished processing it. "You can't do this," she said. Her voice had none of the performance left in it. "I don't know what that DNA thing is. I don't know anyone named." "Ms. Davis," the judge said, "I strongly advise you to stop speaking without counsel present. Anything you say in this courtroom is part of the federal record." She stopped. She understood, in the way that people understand things when the understanding has been forced by circumstances rather than arrived at through reflection, that the sentence she had been in the middle of was the sentence she could not finish in front of a federal judge without adding to the count of things she had already done that morning that were going to require a criminal defense attorney. She looked at Julian. He was still seated at the defendant's table, his hands still flat on the surface in front of him, his expression the expression he had maintained since the courtroom at Westfield. He looked at her with the board meeting expression and said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. The FBI had said it. The judge had read it into the record. The mathematics of what she had built and what she had walked into had resolved themselves in the way mathematics resolves, without negotiation, without appeal, with the simple and complete finality of a result that is what it is because the inputs were what they were. The doors of the courtroom opened. 2 U.S. Marshals came through them with the unhurried, parallel efficiency of people executing a court order, not running, not dramatic, simply moving with the purposeful directness of people who have a function to perform and are performing it. They moved down the center aisle toward the witness stand where Chloe was standing, and the room watched them come with the specific, held quality of a space in which something irreversible is occurring. One of the marshals carried a document that he presented to the court officer. The court officer presented it to the judge. The judge reviewed it and nodded. "Chloe Davis," the marshal said. His voice was professional and uninflected, the voice of someone for whom this sentence was a procedural statement rather than a pronouncement. "You are under arrest for federal extortion, perjury before a federal court, forgery of a document submitted in a federal proceeding, and as a material witness in an ongoing federal investigation." He paused. "You have the right to remain silent." She was crying when they cuffed her. Not the practiced, symmetric tears of the rehearsal dinner. These were the other kind, the kind that come when the performance has ended and there is nothing left to perform for, and the body produces the reaction the person has been deferring for however long the performance has been running. Greer was on his phone, the urgent, low-register phone call of an attorney removing himself from a situation with the professional speed that professional survival required. The child, the 5-year-old boy who had been sitting with the court's family services coordinator throughout the proceeding, in a room adjacent to the courtroom that the court used specifically so that minor children were not present for adult legal proceedings, would be transferred to CPS custody before noon. Placed with a foster family that the Federal Family Services Coordinator would identify according to the standard protocol for emergency placements involving children whose custodial parent had been taken into federal custody. He was 5 years old. He had done nothing. Whatever came after this morning for him would be determined by systems and people and processes that had nothing to do with what Chloe had built and everything to do with the fact that it had collapsed. Julian watched the marshals walk her toward the courtroom doors. At the doors, she turned. It was a brief turn, not sustained, not theatrical, just the involuntary rotation of a person leaving a room who looks back once at the thing they are leaving behind. She looked at Julian from across the length of the courtroom with an expression that had shed everything that had been placed on top of it over the preceding weeks, and was simply whatever was underneath all of that. Julian looked back at her. He did not smile. He did not give her anything additional to take with her. What he gave her was the board meeting expression, one final time, and then the doors closed behind her and she was gone. The judge made several additional notations on the record. He issued the formal referral to the FBI field office. He dismissed the trust petition. He noted for the record that the clinic document submitted by the petitioner had been referred to the relevant authorities for investigation of its authenticity, which would be a separate matter from the perjury charge, but would contribute to the body of evidence surrounding the federal case. Patterson leaned toward Julian. "That's it," he said, in the quiet register of an attorney confirming a proceeding's conclusion. "We're done." Julian nodded. He gathered his documents. He stood. 3 days later, on a Friday afternoon in October, Julian Vance married Alina Reyes in a ceremony at the same country club where, 6 weeks earlier, a woman had walked through the double doors during a toast and tried to use a child and a forged document and the threat of a media cycle to purchase a future she hadn't built. The door stayed closed this time. The ceremony was small, 30 people, which was the number Alina had wanted and which Julian had now understood, with a clarity he hadn't had 6 weeks ago, was the exactly correct number for an occasion that was about the people in the room rather than the size of the room. The flowers were from the florist Alina had used since her mother's birthday a decade ago. The toast that had been interrupted, that had been 3 sentences in when the evening had changed. Julian gave in full this time, from the beginning, without notes, because it had been in him for 6 weeks and had only become more true in the interim. Alina cried during it, not the other kind, the kind that comes when something you have been hoping for has arrived, and your body needs to mark its arrival with something the mind alone can't produce. The reception ran past midnight. Julian danced badly and didn't care. Alina danced well enough for both of them. The 30 people in the room were the 30 people who had been there on the night 6 weeks ago, and who had watched something try to happen and had watched it fail. And there was a quality to the evening that those 30 people understood, and that everyone in it felt. The quality of an occasion that means more than its surface because of what precedes it, because of what didn't happen in the end, because of the specific, durable happiness of people who have passed through something difficult and arrived here anyway. At 11:30, Julian stepped outside to the terrace for a moment. The same terrace where he had stood with Alina 6 weeks ago and told her what he knew and what he was going to do about it. In the cold air of a late autumn evening that had turned out to be the beginning of something rather than the end of it. The air was cold again tonight, and the lights from the country club behind him fell across the same stone in the same way. And the city beyond the grounds was doing what cities do at 11:30 on a Friday night, present, indifferent, continuous. He stood there for a moment. She had brought a child to his wedding to destroy his future. Armed with a piece of paper she had bought for $500 and a confidence in the proposition that money would make a problem disappear that had been accurate about enough problems in her life to have become a governing assumption. She had walked into the courtroom expecting $50,000 a month. She had walked out in handcuffs, facing 20 years in federal prison, having committed 4 federal crimes in a single morning, and inadvertently led the FBI to the location of a cartel enforcer on their most wanted list, which was a contribution to federal law enforcement that she had not intended, and that would be noted in the case file without irony. The biology had been the thing. It had always been the thing. The document she bought for $500 could not change the biology, and the biology had been waiting, patient and immutable, in a medical record filed in a folder in a cabinet in his home office, dated from a summer when he was 10 years old and sick with a fever that he had not chosen, and that had cost him something he had grieved privately, and then made peace with, and then, eventually, had ceased to think of as a loss, and started to think of as simply a fact. One fact among the many facts that constituted who he was. It was still a fact. Tonight it was just a fact that had been entered into a federal court record. The terrace door opened. Alina came out, in the dress, holding 2 glasses of champagne with the easy grace of a woman who had been doing exactly what she wanted to do all evening, and was now extending that evening by exactly the right amount. She gave him a glass. "You've been out here a minute," she said. "I was thinking," he said, "about Chloe, about the biology," he said, "about how the thing she thought she could use against me was the thing she couldn't get around." He paused. She thought the document made the biology irrelevant, but documents are things people make. Biology is what's there. Alina looked at him with the expression she used when she was listening to how he said something rather than just what he said. The expression that had told him, 8 months into their relationship, that she was the person he had been waiting for. "Come back inside," she said. He looked at the city for one more moment. Then he turned from it and went back through the door with her, into the warm light of 30 people who had stayed past midnight because the occasion was worth staying for, and the doors closed behind him, and the evening continued exactly as it was supposed to continue. Complete uninterrupted. His